great threat was, it's a terrible thing to invoke God as partner to your lie. It's also, I would argue, in liturgy, how many times do we invoke God and we're not really there? We're not really there. There's a story, it comes from much later in Judaism, it comes from the 18th century, about a man named the Baal Shem Tov. He was kind of a prophet of the 18th century, our era, and he came from town to town, and this is in Poland, Eastern Europe. This is, again, 18th century. And he was invited, so he was a big deal. He came to this town, and they wanted to show him the synagogue. And so the whole town, led to the synagogue, and they opened the doors and say, please enter, enter. And he said, oh, I can't go in. It's full. And they looked in, and there was nobody there. What do you mean it's full? Oh, it's full. There's no room. All the times you've said prayers and not meant them, all the times you called on God's name and didn't mean what you said, the house is full. I can't go in. And he walked away. Okay? That too is a sense of using the name of God in vain. Now, I'm not saying that it's good to swear. I'm not saying that. But again, this was for adults. And those are the kinds of things that were really behind that. Sorry to shake you up. Yes?
I'm just curious, is this covered anywhere, like in the catechism?
This kind of history?
Well, I mean, this explanation of...
No, look at Erdman's. Look at Erdman's dictionary.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. Again, with Jesus having taken the commandments and expanded them now, it is okay to say, respect God's name. Don't use God's name in anger. Don't use it in jest. Don't use it, save it for prayer. That's nothing wrong with that, but that's kind of like attached. It's a development, but it's not the original problem. Okay? Okay. Yeah. Number 8, verse 8. Remember the Sabbath. Keep it holy. What day is the Sabbath? Saturday. Who said Sunday? Now, as Christians, we have kind of made Sunday our version of the Sabbath, but it's not the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a Jewish institution. It's the 7th day of the week. It's Saturday. Even thank God they haven't changed it yet. Our monthly calendars start with the first day of the week over here and Saturday over here. You'll find some printers will have the week and the weekend. My personal calendar is that way, huh? Starts with Monday. But the tradition going back, ancient Roman times, was Sunday, the first day of the week. That was the day when God said, let there be light in the Jewish numbering. We've not read that story yet. And the 7th day is the day when God rests, and that's Sabbath. Shabbat is how they say it in Hebrew. Say Shabbat. Shabbat. And when you on the Sabbath, if you want to greet someone, you say Shabbat Shalom. Sabbath peace. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. So late on a Friday or any time on Saturday, if you encounter a Jew who's observant, that's the proper greeting. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. So we'll talk about the Sabbath. I mean, this is, again, a commandment that as a child just seems so stupid. Because, for me as a kid, because my parents saw it as things you can't do, things you can't do. It's not just things you can't do, it's to say, I'm not a slave anymore. When I'm a slave, my time is not mine. Whenever the bell rings, I gotta run. Whenever they pull the gong, I gotta come and say, what do you want, master? Huh? I'm a free man now. I am not a slave. I have time that I can do what I want to do. Fun things, pleasurable things, renewing things. But the pressure to, now we're slaves of the almighty dollar. We're slaves of trying to squeeze more out of the week because we're so crazy, crazy busy. Sabbath is the solution to our problem. But as Christians and Americans, we haven't quite gotten it yet. I really try to avoid appointments on Sunday. People don't get it. Couples come in, we got a marriage plan. I said, oh, it's Sunday. And they're like, so? We need that. And we're ill-tempered, and we're sick, and we're crabby because we don't rest. We need margin in our lives. Every sheet of paper, every book has margin. We don't have margin anymore. Sabbath is meant to be margin. It's not meant to be, my poor mother, my mother was a very, very, very religious woman, and she understood it. Doing dishes was like, almost, I said, no, Mom, it's just, you gotta do that sort of stuff. And if you enjoy it, if puttering in your garden is enjoyment, then it's Sabbath. Okay? If you really enjoy it, it's not, to host a family is work, but you do that because it's joy. It brings joy. So, we really would do well not make pictures of God the Father and to treat our Christian Sabbath a little bit more like the Jewish Sabbath. Again, off my soapbox. Verse 12. Oh, by the way, so let's notice here, look at the explanation as to why Sabbath. Verse 11. In 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. That's one idea for why Sabbath began. It's pegged to Genesis, which we're going to read eventually. In Deuteronomy, there's a second set of the Ten Commandments. And there's no mention of God created in 6 days and rested. Instead, it was, you were slaves in Egypt. And now you are free. So keep the Sabbath as a day of freedom. Okay. So that's where that idea comes. I didn't make that up. It comes from Deuteronomy. Verse 12. Honor your father and your mother. Now, when I was a child, it sounded like obey. Okay, but obedience is easier than honoring. Because, as kids, we go, yes, Mom, yes, Dad, yeah, we're going, no. In our head, we're going, no, but in our face, we go, yeah. That's obedience. Honor means to give them proper respect. And it's not meant for little children. It's meant for adults taking care of their aged parents. When they stop being productive. When they start being a drag. Honor your father and your mother. That's how they would have heard this. It's not for children first. It's for adults first. Okay? 13. You shall not kill. Well, of course, the Old Testament is filled with killings. So it's really more properly understood, you shall not kill illegally. Or you shall not murder. You shall not murder. And some translations render it that way, because kill and murder, there's a difference in our minds. Commit adultery. We'll talk about adultery. Only married women can commit, and married women and single men can commit adultery. Because women, your wife is your property. If the husband sleeps around, that he doesn't commit adultery. But if another man sleeps with your wife, that's adultery. If you don't follow that, it'll come back. We'll come back to that. Shall not steal. Again, probably it was more narrowly focused. Steal. Steal anything? Well, particularly steal people. Kidnapping. Okay? That probably initially that's the concern. Bearing false witness. Again, look at the words. Bearing false witness. It's not about just making little white lies. It's about doing what? Misleading in court. When you know the truth and you don't tell it, you are giving witness, but you're giving false witness. And then coveting. Coveting, the 9th and 10th commandments in the Catholic account, the 10th commandment in the others account, is the only commandment that has to do with thinking. The rest all have to do with actions. But this is a commandment about thinking. And Jesus will build on that. He'll say, again, I quoted him, Jesus will say, you've heard the commandment, you shall not kill. I tell you, you shall not call your neighbor a fool. Okay? Because to do so is to murder him in your mind. Again, Jesus is not trying to make his rules totally impractical. He's trying to say, remember, the mind is the garden of your actions. You know, you plant the seed in your thoughts, and then they grow into action. So if you guide your thoughts, then you won't even get close to the actions. Okay. Verse 18. Now, when all the people perceived the thunderings and the lightnings and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, the people were afraid and trembled, and they stood afar off and said to Moses, you speak to us, and we will hear, but let not God speak to us, lest we die. So again, in my little chart here, the Ten Commandments, God speaks directly, but what they hear is thunder and earthquake, and their ears bleed. And they say, God, Moses, you speak to God. He is too powerful. He is too potent. He is too strong. Moses said, this is the verse I quoted last time when talking about fear of the Lord. Moses said, do not fear. God has come to test you, and that the fear of him may be before your eyes, that you may not sin. And the people stood afar off, while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. So that's this middle little unit here. So now Moses goes back to the cloud, and here comes the covenant code. Here's what Moses will bring down later and say what God told him. Questions? Take a little break. I'm not done lecturing. Take a little break.